Hello everybody, I am Ynsin and there is breaking news on the internet. Now before I get into this, I want it to be very clear that this news has been completely lost in all of the news about that submarine that went to go and find the Titanic only to have found the Titanic. That seems to be anything anybody is talking about, and it is a literal crime that nobody is acknowledging that there are events that have taken place in the last couple of days. I was streaming a game a few days ago. It's not really relevant what the game was, but if you go on my channel, eventually you'll find it. And it had crossed my mind that Alec Baldwin discharged a firearm into somebody a few years ago, and it took their life. Today, I had intended to do a video based on how that rubbed me so poorly, and it turns out there's actual breaking news that happened yesterday. This is what was lost in all of the commotion about that submarine. First of all, we need to familiarize ourselves with the actual situation. A movie that had been in the making a few years ago is now back in production and could very well be the single most cursed movie of this decade. I know Wikipedia isn't the most reliable source of information, but I have verified just about every important point that is on this Wikipedia page myself. On October 21st, 2021, Helena Hutchins was fatally shot and director Joel Souza was injured on the set of the film Rust, was discharged from a revolver used as a prop by actor Alec Baldwin. So essentially what was happening at the time was that Alec Baldwin was practicing his quick draws. One incident where he drew his weapon, it must have accidentally gone off, and this bullet traveled to none other than Helena Hutchins, the cinematographer who was standing right in front of him. Now, at first glance, it seems like Alec Baldwin is in fact at fault. Here's what we know. There are two rules no matter where you are in the world for handling firearms. Number one, assume they're always loaded. And number two, don't point it at anything you don't intend to fire at. These rules are completely universal for every country in the world, and they're the base essentials for guaranteeing firearm safety. This is the instance in which case those two rules apply. You don't know the firearm's loaded, so don't play with it. So was Alec Baldwin at fault? Yes, he was. He should have abided by those two very basic rules of firearm handling. Now, a day or two after all of this came out, an FBI investigation occurred and basically found Alec Baldwin at fault. Unfortunately, what we didn't know is here was where Alec Baldwin was. Here we see Alec Baldwin clearly looking pretty down, which is fair. He did just shoot and kill somebody and people are investigating him for murder. There is more to this photo than we think. If we go down here, it turns out he's on a beach. I did a wee bit of research. This is the Hamptons Beach, which to my understanding looks like a New York beach with a class-based paywall. Second thing I noticed when I was looking at this photo was that Alec Baldwin is holding something here. Now, it's not necessarily what this towel is because he could have been swimming. There's a tablet here, which is also great. He could have been watching YouTube like you're doing right now. But what concerned me was initially, I thought this round thing in his hand was a golf ball. The more I look at it, however, the more it seems like less a golf ball and more a flotation device, so your keys don't go underwater, which means he was in the water. The towel confirms this. Now, there's also a little yellow tag on here, which is concerning. Best case scenario, these are locker keys. Worst case scenario, Alec Baldwin, just days after he had shot and killed a person on the set of his movie, went out, rented a boat or a jet ski, and then drove it around the Hamptons. Now, call me crazy, but this doesn't exactly seem remorseful to me. He's got the look right, but he is an actor. So we don't really know what's going through his head. The Daily Mail also made sure to point out the brand of bracelet that he was wearing, which, just shame on you, Daily Mail. Anyway, now there was one other person at fault here, and that was the person who was supposed to be handling the arms of the situation. Her name was Hannah Gutierrez Reed. She was the daughter of a rather famous armorer for a lot of Hollywood movies named Thal Reed. If that name sounds familiar, it's probably because it is. Now, Hannah Gutierrez Reed seems to have had her second instance of employment in a Hollywood movie with the filming of the movie Rust, which is where this occurred. Essentially, people kept saying that she was irresponsible and not fit to handle firearms, and all of this kind of seemed like deflection from Alec Baldwin's team. If you believe the conspiracy that Alec Baldwin's team sandbagged Hannah Gutierrez Reed, that's neither here nor there. I don't care. We know the facts are that Hannah was handling the firearms and that Alec Baldwin was supposed to be handling them for the purpose of filming. I did a wee bit of research into Hannah Gutierrez Reed, and it turns out this is not actually the first time an instance of negligence had been given to Hannah Gutierrez Reed. Apparently, Nicolas Cage also had an issue with her at a rather similar set of instances. Nicolas Cage stormed off of a set after Hannah Gutierrez Reed discharged a firearm with no warning. Now, again, there are two very basic rules of firearms, and Alec Baldwin, as an actor, should have known them. However, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, the armorer, needed to have known them. If she discharged a weapon negligently, she is at fault. So there's an update to this that came out a few days ago. As it turns out, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, seen right here, was tampering with evidence by trying to bargain narcotics. It's not particularly clear on what this is. Basically, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed's defense was she was drinking and smoking weed, and that's what led her to miss the live rounds in the revolver that went off, tragically taking the life of Helena Hutchins. People have dismissed the charges against Alec Baldwin because of this. So again, if you believe that there's a conspiracy where Alec Baldwin's legal team is trying to find a scapegoat that's not Alec Baldwin, it's somewhat plausible. I can't really find any evidence to discredit this. In fact, it could very well be true. This line right here. It is shocking that after 20 months of investigation, the special prosecutor now throws in a completely new charge against Miss Gutierrez-Reed with no prior notice or any witness statements, lab reports, or evidence to support it. That was her defending lawyer, Jason Bowles, who was Gutierrez-Reed's attorney. Now, at this point, I'm getting into what I can only assume is speculation and conjecture. Hannah Gutierrez-Reed did transfer narcotics to another person with the intent to prevent the apprehension, prosecution, or conviction of herself. They gave no further details. Gutierrez-Reed is the sole remaining defendant of the case after prosecutors in April dropped an involuntary manslaughter charge against Baldwin, who was pointing the gun at cinematographer Helena Hutchins during rehearsal. And also, apparently the director Joel Souza was also injured by this. We haven't heard anything about this. Okay, so all of this is basically out of the way. I want to be able to differentiate the legal case from the actual film itself, and the film is what upsets me. Now, the film itself, Rust, has restarted production again. Why anyone thought this was a good idea is absolutely mind-boggling. It's stated in several different places that this is in fact Alec Baldwin's passion project. So it could very well be likely that Alec Baldwin himself didn't want to cut his losses and let go of it. People are claiming that it had a small budget of only $6 to $7 million, which to me doesn't really seem like a small budget. If I had $7 million to make a movie, I probably wouldn't be hiring an armorer who would fail a drug test. No offense to anybody who does drugs recreationally or anything like that. I don't really care what you do in your spare time. But once it starts influencing other people and their lives, then it's time to take a step back and think, am I really the best person for this role? Because it's 2023. We all know what drugs do to us now. With the invention of the internet, everybody now knows that weed is probably as bad for you as coffee. However, unlike coffee, it impairs your judgment. Now, the film Rust has a bit of information to come with it, mainly including the cast, which has surprised me. Here we go. This is the cast of the movie Rust that's coming out. We've got Alec Baldwin here, obviously. But surprisingly, we've got Jensen Ackles, who needs no introduction. He's pretty famous. We've got Travis Fimmel, who had played Ragnar Lothbrok in Vikings. And strangely, Devin Werkheiser. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but even though he's grown facial hair, I recognize him as the main actor in Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide. So he grew up as a Disney princess, and it seems like he's now cashing in on a career. I don't particularly recognize many others. I recognize John Hopkins. What really surprises me is that all three, Alec Baldwin, Jensen Ackles, and Travis Fimmel, came together and thought, hey, this movie would be a good idea to produce now. Now, for these people to all come together and think, yes, we must keep continuing the filming of this movie where a woman was shot and killed, is just brain dead. I've always had enormous respect for all three of these actors, but sadly now, it seems like their judgment is just as bad as Hannah Gutierrez-Reed's. Also, while I was looking into Devin Werkheiser, or whatever his name is, I discovered that this movie had also been made. I'm not joking. This is an actual movie that came out, and Devin Werkheiser is one of the voice actors in it. So awesome. This movie is in production, and I've discovered that there is, in fact, a Shrek movie that never needed to exist. It's got a pretty high IMDb rating as well, but I think I'll give it a miss. Recap, we are getting the single most cursed movie that is going to come out of this decade, the 2020 to 2030 decade. Now, when I say this is a cursed movie, I'm not saying it's a cursed movie because all of the worst things have happened on this movie. I'm saying it's a cursed movie because the single worst thing that could have happened, happened. And everybody involved still thought it was a good idea to keep filming it. Well, someone was shot and killed on set. A husband and a child had lost their mother to the hands of negligence by two people, one being a famous actor and the second being the child of a famous armorer. On top of all of this, there was not a single medic on site when the incident occurred. The movie is currently still in production, which also makes it cursed, and it seems like the prosecution was holding on to this evidence, waiting for something like the submarine incident with the Titanic to happen, so that they could just sweep it under the rug and keep going like nothing ever happened. So here's my thoughts. I feel like this is going to be boycotted as soon as it comes out. I don't think everybody's forgotten that this is the movie that a lady was shot and killed on the set of. I'm not sure people are going to trust Alec Baldwin with firearms again. It doesn't matter how much sunk cost you have, that is the kind of movie where you would just cut your losses and leave. And whether or not there is actually a conspiracy behind this from Alec Baldwin's prosecution team to think about a very, very specific narrative, I don't personally feel, but I can see the evidence for why anybody would believe so. We simply need more information. So yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about. This is my first investigative video. I'm probably going to do a bunch more of these, and I'm certainly going to be keeping up with this movie. Do you think that Alec Baldwin really did create this elaborate conspiracy to absolve himself of guilt? Do you think it really was Gutierrez Reed's fault? Do you think it was everybody in the room who was to blame? Do you think that there is a movie more cursed that'll come out in the next decade? It's really interesting to see everybody else's perspective on this, especially since nobody is really even mentioning this. Go down to the comments and let me know. So thank you for watching, and I hope I'll see you again. Goodbye.